Hello, this is Ken Volk, Senior Director of Creative Brand at Kronos.
My name is Joe Serra. I'm the lead producer at Kronos, and you're listening to The Go Creative Show.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Consoli. I am a director and owner of BC Media Productions, and this is The Go Creative Show, the show dedicated to creative professionals in the video production and filmmaking industries. Today, we're all going to learn how to work with in-house advertising agencies. Ken Volk and Joe Serra from Kronos are going to give us a rare look into how these in-house advertising agencies function and tips to help you get more work. The Go Creative Show is supported by Rule Boston Camera, Hedge.video, Shutterstock, Magnanimous Rentals, and PremiumBeat.com. Now, this is an episode not to miss and super important. Lots to learn here because we're going to learn about in-house advertising agencies. What are they and how do you get work from them? Why should you be getting work from them? Now, here's the thing. A lot of people don't know this, but a lot of these big, huge, large organizations, they used to be working with ad agencies. That's what you always think they were doing. But more and more, these companies are actually forming their own ad agencies inside of their business. So they're bringing them in-house, which is why this is called in-house agencies. Now, this is crucial because a lot of us that are in the production industry, our work comes from ad agencies. And as these businesses sort of leave and have their own little companies, own little ad agencies within their company, we need to be targeting these businesses to get more work as well. But the strategy is totally different. You know, the way you approach an ad agency is very different than the way you approach and work with in-house ad agencies. The structure is different. The amount of people, it's a lot smaller usually. So it's a completely different kind of relationship that you need to build. Now, our guests, Ken Volk and Joe Serra, are the creative team at Kronos. And Kronos is a huge, huge company. We did a project for them last year, and we referenced that throughout this episode as well. But they have an in-house ad agency, and Ken and Joseph run that in-house ad agency. And these guys give us such a rare inside look at how they work, you know, and best practices on how people like us, production companies like us, should be reaching out to them. So there's so much in this episode. You guys are absolutely going to love it, and I can't wait to share it with you. But before we get there, we have news from Rule Boston Camera. If you guys have been listening for a while, you've heard me talk about Rule's Pub Nights. And these are free events that are just loaded with information. And I have exciting news. They are back. They are back and in a big way. Now, first of all, Rule is a place to go to purchase and rent your production equipment. We talk about them all the time. They've been our longest lasting sponsor, so you know who they are. Now, their next pub night is Wednesday, September 11th. And it's going to be all about ARRI. They're going to have cameras, lenses, and accessories. They're all there. So much packed into this one. We've got a couple guys from ARRI coming in, and they're going to talk about the Alexa LF and the Mini LF, plus their signature primes and how they pair with the Pro cameras and their accessories. And there's so much going on. Now, here are the details. This is a great opportunity to get a hands-on experience with these cameras, lenses, and accessories. And it all starts at 6 p.m. But here's the thing. If you actually get there a little earlier at 3 o'clock, they're going to do a whole little seminar just on accessories. So from 3 to 5, it's all about accessories. From 6 to 8, it's the regular pub night with the beer and the pizza and the whole thing. And that's where they're going to talk about the Alexa LF and the Mini LF. There is so much in that pub night. I am super excited to be there. I will be there. And I hope you guys are too. And the way to register is to go to rule.com/events. It's free. But that's how you get there. Rule.com/events. All right, let's dive right in because there is a lot to talk about and a lot to learn with Ken Volk and Joe Serra from Kronos. So I'm here with Ken Volk. He's a Senior Director of Creative and Brand. And I've got Joe Serra, Lead Producer, Integrated Production at Kronos. Guys, thank you so much for being on Go Creative Show.
Thank you.
Thanks
Glad
for having
to be
us.
here.
So if you guys are listening and you're saying, if you've never heard of an in-house creative agency, this is the perfect episode for you. If you've heard of them, this is also the perfect episode for you because we're going to talk about what it is that they do and why you should understand the way in-house creative agencies work, especially if you're in the production industry. You got to know how these people work in order to get into their heads and figure out how to get work from them, which is what we're all trying to do. Let's be honest. That's why you're listening to this show.
Are you looking for a job?
That's the whole thing. I've already worked with you guys. I worked with you guys last year, and just the way that we work together, I thought was really cool. I've worked with agencies and I worked with in-house agencies as well, but I felt like we had a good rapport going. We had a really big project. Yeah. It was super fun and a lot of moving parts. So it wasn't just kind of your typical interview-based video. It was something much more complicated. And I thought that the two of you do a good job of explaining what you do, how it's different from ad agencies, and kind of what you're looking for in producers and, vendors, video vendors.
Absolutely.
So that's why I wanted to get this whole thing started.
Yeah, great.
Let's just kind of start with introductions so people can understand who's who. Ken, I want to start with you. You're the Senior Director of Creative and Brand. What is that? What does that mean when you're working in-house like you are here at Kronos?
I have to tell you, from a Kronos perspective, every in-house group is a little bit different. So head up the group that does internal creative for Kronos. Internal creative for Kronos is pretty much anything that the marketing department needs to put out from a public perspective. The number one benefit of being in-house is you know your brand. You're with your actual clients every day. You're actually, if you're doing it right, you're all 6,000 people at Kronos are working for one client, which is Kronos. The company, the bottom line, all those jazz.
So, Joe, lead producer, integrated production. What does that mean? What do you do?
So it means a lot of things. I think, Ken hit on basically the high-level creative of who he manages, and I'm one of those people that he manages. But basically anything and everything video production, essentially.
Okay, so you're video-focused.
I'm video-focused, but that's where kind of the integrated thing gets in as well, because I'm video-focused, I'm animation-focused. There could be any other digital out-of-home usage that might happen as well. Basically anything that requires hiring a production vendor. That could be video, animation, or kind of anything under the sun. If it's getting, aerial drone shots of something or whatnot, it's kind of just everything video production and animation focused.
So you guys are like a little mini ad agency within Kronos. And it's interesting to me because, I've worked a lot with, I guess, traditional ad agencies. I don't even know what to call them as compared to what you guys are. But they've got a million different clients. So you go to them and you may work for 4 or 5 different clients for the same producer or creative director at an ad agency. But things are different with in-house. So Ken, first of all, did you used to work at an ad agency?
Many moons ago. Miraculously, I've stayed at one place, Kronos, for 19 years. Before that, I was in tech at PTC and Minolta Business Systems. But before that, I started out in Chicago at an agency and then a small place here in Boston.
All right. So are you seeing a trend where creative directors from ad agencies are kind of being poached to become, the creative directors at in-house agencies?
Yeah, so certainly the last 10 years, there's been a massive transition to bring things in-house. And the way most people in-house will talk about things is out of house, is it in-house? Used to be, if you went down the path of in-house, it was typically for cost savings. So, we're doing this much things with this external agency. We'll still give them the hard work or the high-level strategy, but we'll take on things that are more day-to-day, tactical, whether it's making marketing materials, sales materials, sending out emails, we'll deal with that. And so a lot of people started out there 10, 15 years ago for in-house groups. But what quickly started to see was there's an advantage to having people in-house because they know your brand. They can live it and breathe it every day. So that transition started to be less about cost than it was about doing great work for that brand. And so you see in-house groups at every level at this point. You're talking the Coca-Colas of the world, the Boeings of the world. They have massive in-house groups doing work. A couple of years ago, I was working with somebody through the In-House Agency Forum, which is a great in-house group, kind of a trade group. And Discovery Channel, I think most people don't know how much they were doing in-house from a studio perspective. All those shows were heavily managed in-house. That was a way to do it both creatively, strategically, and from a cost perspective. So there's a lot of benefits when you think about an external place on variation, because as you noted, the client element, we might not be as quick to be able to address things that are changing in the tech space. We might not have budget. We might not have headcount, so we can't expand as fast. And if you have a different client in a different space, so maybe you're a group that's focused on healthcare as an external agency, maybe you're a group that then a couple weeks later, now you've got Dunkin' Donuts. So you think about it from that perspective, you're going to have different learnings. We don't have that type of differentiation. So that's one of the things we have to chase. And that's why a lot of in-house groups in the last 10 years, besides trying to bring work in-house and find that talent, as you noted, whether it's a creative director or art director, bringing someone from an agency who's got that background so that we can level that playing field of talent. The other part is we want to work with them too because they help push us along. So the best in-house groups are working with out-of-house all the time.
Okay.
It's not something where it's an either or. You'll hear that sometimes, and it's competitive. And certainly I think from a talent perspective, we view it as competitive as an in-house group. Like, how do we get some of these people in? When you talk about people who have that varied writing skills or creative skills, especially if it's concepting side, they're used to the, if you will, the rat race, the chasing it down, trying to survive. So we're after that too. But when it comes to like doing great work, across the board, both in-house and out-house are doing great work at this point. You can oftentimes see now, like you go to whether it's Hatch or any of these award things, there's in-house groups doing just as amazing, unique, creative as out-of-house groups.
That's interesting. So now, so you're seeing at these award shows that your work is up against the work of traditional ad agencies that have multiple clients that are not in-house at all. And it's all sort of being considered for the same awards now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think the advantage that I'm seeing is you become a real expert with the brand that you're working on because it's the only brand that you're working on. Here at Kronos, you guys are only doing Kronos. So you have a really intimate knowledge of it. But you are still looking for outside vendors, which is kind of like the crux of this conversation, because I think a lot of people that are listening to this show would be those outside vendors that would be looking for work from you guys or Discovery Channel or whatever, these places that have in-house agencies. I want to narrow down to production and bring Joe into this conversation because most of our audience are, in video production, certainly. As a lead producer for a single brand here in-house, what is that experience like?
Yeah, so I mean, I came from the agency side of things. So as Ken was just mentioning, all those different clients, and one day you're working on X client, the next day you're working on another client. So one of the things when Ken and I started talking was talking about the Kronos brand in detail and in depth, and talking about what we can really do from a production side of things, from a video production side of things. Like Kronos is doing a lot of great video production work, but at the same time, like what's bigger and better out there? Like how can we push the envelope when it comes to the quality of production, to having to hire vendors that we may have worked with for a while and bringing in new vendors at the same time. But I mean, it's been an unbelievable experience coming over from that agency side of things and being able to work for that one client, which is Kronos, and being able to work with multiple vendors as well, like across the board, whether it's individual animators, production companies, all the way to bringing on a freelance editor to sit in house and kind of do some work. And also, one of the biggest things is also trying to expand our production capabilities to an extent internally as well. Like my main focus is managing all of our vendors and working closely with Ken. When our designers and our writers get together and we start concepting, creative work for, whether it's a big trade show, whether it's a customer story that we go out and film, whether it's in the United States or in another country, we're all working really closely together. And then that comes down to me to say, who's the vendor that's going to produce this work,
Yep.
And that's kind of where my role comes into play in searching for those vendors. And they could be people we've partnered with for a long time, or they could be a unique director that we want to work with, or a cinematographer, or just, that style that we're looking for. It's a little bit different. We've seen it, an ad agency use X director, X production company, and we want that same style internally as well. So that might be something we go out and pursue, and we're looking at references all the time. So that's kind of where we've been able to kind of expand our production capabilities with the quality. It's one of the reasons we were able to work with you last year on a great project together, and get that kind of different vibe and style we were going for. We might hire you again. We don't know.
I love that might. That's not appreciated.
We haven't got to those details yet.
I completely forgot that you were at an ad agency ahead of time. You were with
Mullen Lowe,
right here in Boston.
Yep.
Okay, so, and that was most recent. So, Ken, you said it was like almost, what'd you say, 19 years ago or something? Okay, so you more recently did that transition. Talk to me a little bit about the differences being a producer at an ad agency and being a producer here for an in-house agency. I can only assume that there are times when you're kind of like I don't even know how to word this, because I'm thinking like, do you ever crave multiple clients? Is there something you feel like you're missing because you're only dealing with one?
It's a little bit of a mix of both. So the answer is yes, but at the same time, Ken mentioned it earlier, like Kronos services so many different verticals: healthcare, manufacturing, public sector. I could go on and name 10 of them essentially.
Yeah.
And those are our clients internally here at Kronos. So the work that comes down, let's just say from the healthcare side of things, could be completely different from the manufacturing side of things. So they are our different clients, and we're able to do, different creative work for each of those clients. Whereas also we're responsible for the whole global brand. So when we go to Kronos Works every year in November, we are responsible internally for putting on that whole show. Ken calls that whole show. He's kind of the creative director behind the scenes calling that whole show. We're producing videos for that show. And that's not even a specific client like the healthcare or the manufacturing side of things. It's Kronos as the big brand altogether. But to get back to answer your question kind of from earlier, being in the actual ad agency world, the biggest difference, which is what I love here at Kronos, is that, the Mullen Lows have their whole creative director team, and I mean, it's a ton of creative directors, and they focus on certain clients, and then they have their team under them, their ACDs, and then their writers and designers. And then that work would get concepted and then come to the production side of things. I was on Mullen Lows in-house production team, essentially, which had shooters, editors, animators, all that stuff, and producers. So I was sitting on that team as a producer. But that work would come down from the creative directors and essentially say, make this work. You know what I mean? Here's the concept, bring it to life. Whereas shifting to Kronos, which is one of the things that I was really attracted to here, was I work on the creative team, and I'm in those brainstorms. I'm in those discussions. We're working hand in hand together to bring the best concept to life. So it's less of a go make this specific thing. It's more of, hey, we have this thought, we have these brainstorms, we come up with a couple concepts. Joe and team, how do we bring those to life? What's the best way to bring those to life? Whereas, so we work on that together and collaborate together, which has been the biggest kind of reward of coming to Kronos. And you see it in the work, and then also kind of moving forward of how we're growing and expanding that.
And if you don't mind me checking
go ahead.
One of the other things about that is Joe represents kind of when we talk about like the talent play. When I was saying, like we're after certain talent, you run into like 3 types of experiences when you're looking to hire for an in-house group. And the same thing I think works for anyone who we partner with from a vendor perspective. I think this will be helpful, is you run into those who are at an agency and they're interested in coming in-house because it might be they've heard ours are better maintained, or they want to focus on a brand, or they want a different work-life balance, whatever it may be. They come to the equation of, I'm interested in-house, and I also hear in-house is doing great work. I've been seeing that the last 10 years. It's not something that's a stigma. So yeah, I want to come in-house, even though we'll still hear those that throw out the stigma of, well, you go in-house to die. It's like, you're not really being creative anymore.
So you felt people really felt that way?
Totally. That definitely happens.
Wow.
But when you have those people come in, you interview them, and they're still pushing that angle of like, well, let me tell you how to do branding because I know more than you do. Okay, so that's one angle. Is like the agency people, unfortunately, who still, there's a little bit of this, and I think it's going downhill. There's less of them than used to be, but it's that if you're not in agencies, you're not doing great work. Okay. Then you have the other side of the equation, which is diehard in-housers. So diehard in-housers, they run across this line of like, well, just give me the work. I'm going to cross off the list. I'm going to go home. So you're not going to get the unique work. You're not get the expansion of potential. You're not going to drive broader opportunities. And we just kept interviewing those 2 groups of people. And I'm trying to build a group where, back to the problem-solving scenario, we needed somebody who was like, yes, Joe understands the production side of things, but he also can drive the creative side, so we can just solve problems, whether that's building a in-house studio over the next 5-6 years, whether that's finding new vendors externally, whether that's partnering with these vendors, and being able to explain both, hey, I understand where you're coming from, but here's where we're coming from. And so I was constantly looking for that hybrid and lucked out with getting Joe within my network. I'd known him for a while, and when I started to see that that was what we needed, because we'd hired in that role in another position on our design side, Joe was hopefully available after many, many scotches and begging and pleading.
It was our dating phase.
It was our dating phase.
Did you really resist at first? What was,
yes.
Why? So, all right. So, Ken was, so Joe's already in an agency. Ken's asking for you to join the team here.
Yeah.
What was your apprehension?
Without naming the specific brands.
Name it.
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it. We can.
Well, don't get yourself in trouble.
No, I don't think I will. But no, I mean, how do you pass up working for JetBlue, Royal Caribbean, American Greetings, E-Trade? I could go down the list. Of shooting Rob Gronkowski on planes, working with the best creative directors and directors, across the country, if not the world.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing, talking about big, sexy brands. And when Ken and I first started chatting, and I knew Ken through his wife, actually, who I worked with at a couple agencies ago. And I knew about Kronos, but I didn't know like kind of what Kronos was all about and like the details of what they were doing in-house for the creative and video production specifically. So when Ken and I first started talking, I'll always have the conversation. I think a lot of people will, it's a networking thing, about what he needed in-house. It definitely piqued my interest, but at the same time I was thinking, okay, software company versus big, fun brands, the best creative I'll probably ever work on in my life.
Yeah.
And then it just came down to a lot of the opportunity of like what we can build here. Like, I mean, to be literal, we're sitting at a table in what's slowly becoming a podcast studio for our Kronos employees. Like if people want to, podcast or, produce content, this is one place to do that. That was something, Ken wanted to help, wanted somebody to help build. So we're on our way with that. It still has some work to be done on it, but that's just one example of kind of like building a great in-house brand, but also focusing on how to build like the best video production capabilities. So kind of when I started talking with Ken more and more, it really became an attractive place to work. It's a stable company, one of the best places to work in Massachusetts, if not the country. And also, to be completely honest, a little burnout starting to happen on the agency side of things. So, you work round the clock. I was just looking at some Instagram stories of some friends that are at, still, in the agency world, and it's 2 a.m. on Saturday. They're there because they're pitching a client, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
On Monday morning. So love that drive, because that's when the best creative work comes out too. It's just everyone's in it together. You have the top dogs in the company, and then you have all the workers getting it done, and that's how you win big clients essentially. But to be able to bring that to Kronos, and we've been able to put out some great work here, and honestly, it was one of the best career moves I've ever made, and we're still building, and I'm growing the team here too. So it's still a lot of work to be done, but love it here.
Let's take a moment and talk about Magnanimous Rentals over at magrents.com. Magnanimous Rentals is an equipment rental house, production equipment rental house, and it's based in Chicago, but they ship all over the country. They have an incredible inventory, so much really, really cool stuff there. But where they excel the most is their prices. I'm going to their website right now, as I do every day, to see what's going on. Look at this. We've got a flash discount. Look at that. See, this is what I'm talking about. You have to go to Mag Rents every day because you never know what you're going to find. Well, you do know what you're going to find a little bit. Let me tell you. You're going to find a great inventory. You're going to find excellent prices. But you're also going to get these wonderful surprises because more often than not, there are these things called flash discounts. And these are steeply discounted prices. I'm talking sometimes up to 50% off. But they're only for a limited time. So you have to place the order while the flash discount is going on. So that's why you got to check out Mag Rents every single day and see what they have to offer over there at magrents.com. And lastly, let's talk about Hedge. Hedge is a backup software for filmmakers. We all are, we live and die by our media. Let's just think about that for a second. Our cameras, our audio equipment, everything is recording to media. Without that media, we have nothing. So why are you just dragging files all over your Finder? That's not the way to do it. Your media is your gold. That's your currency. You need to treat it with respect. You need to be using real media management software, professional software. And this is what Hedge is. You go to hedge.video and you learn all about what Hedge has to offer. I mean, the big ticket items is that it's super easy to use and it's very fast. And you know that at the end of a transfer, you have peace of mind knowing that everything was copied over correctly. Do you get that with the Finder? No, of course you don't. I go to Hedge, I open up the program, I set my sources on the left-hand side, I set my destinations on the right-hand side, I press transfer, and I leave my sets with 2 copies of all my media. Now, you can have more copies, I just happen to do 2, but that's the point. You can customize Hedge however you want so that it fits into your workflow. They also are introducing new features constantly. In the most recent version, They've got filtering and renaming, and it just keeps getting better and better. So this is how you do. This is how you do it. You go to hedge.video/Go Creative Show. That will give you a 20% off discount from the full license. And they also have a whole variety of other licenses as well. But you get 20% off by going to hedge.video/Go Creative Show. So head over there and start using professional software for your media, right? It's time. Hedge.video. So is it more valuable as a producer and a creative director to have great work from multiple brands or great work from a single brand? Does it matter? Is it about the work? Is it about the brand? Like, what do you guys think?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I would say, for me, and it's actually one of the interesting things that comes up with in-house too, because even in-house, so I'm not going to get the numbers right. It's been too long since I've seen current numbers, but typically you'll hear something like, so turnover at an agency might be 2-3 years. Turnover in-house, 5, 6, 7 years. Okay, so typically let's just say you're double. Okay, even in my space, then when you get to 19, people are going, "What are you doing? Why are you still at Kronos? Like, what are you thinking?" And so you have to go through that process of like, well, what matters to you? And so I think where you're asking the question, to me, it's about opportunity. So you get to develop a brand at multiple levels when you're in-house because you're there recognizing when X isn't happening. And if somebody's out of house and we happen to reach out, wouldn't matter if it's one of us, an in-house group, or whether it's our HR person, whoever it may be, an EC member, it wouldn't matter. Maybe something gets triggered, and if they're talking to somebody at Hill Holiday, suddenly Hill Holiday is like, we got to pitch them on this new thing about a mobile app. It may happen, but they've got to get in to find that out. We're sitting right here going, why don't we have a mobile app for our events? Why aren't we doing podcasts? Oh, well, we're not doing podcasts because we don't have a studio. Okay, well, can we carve up budgets to do a studio? How does that grow? Then we do consult with others to make that bigger. What does that feed? So you know where you have to feed the beast. And so if you're the type of person who wants to make a brand the best it can be, and you want to look at the opportunity from a problem-solving perspective, which I always come back to, if you're not a creative problem solver, I don't think people should be in-house if not creative problem solvers because you're going to have so many opportunities to do other things. But if your play on that opportunity to flip this other side is, if your play is, I need diversity in the work I do, in-house might not be for you because it's right back to what Joe was talking about. When he mentions the sexy brands, I still, every couple of years, do is it time to go back to an agency or is it time to go find a different brand so I can have a new sexy brand?
Yeah.
Luckily for me, we did go into industries more. And so Joe missed the number by a ton. We serve over 30 different industries. So we could have whatever project come in. Like,
what did you say? Now I don't remember.
He said 10 plus.
Well, I guess it's true.
We'll get him there. He's
Still
only
learning.
a couple years. We'll get him there. But it's one of those things where, oil and gas versus, a retail thing. Fantastic. Just a couple of years ago, we were working on a pitch for Target, and we got to make a video to pitch Target on their own workforce. It's like, okay, so now I did something for Target.
Yeah.
That was an opportunity, but I'm not working in an agency to do that. So it's which does it matter to you? Are you going to get your jollies really out of like, is it a scenario of I have to do something unique all the time? Or is it I'm going to find a way to do something different for some group that probably needs you to do something different? They're craving it. I mean, we're a unique culture at Kronos. It's part of what's kept me here. Is because we can get our hands in so many things. But if you're going to be in that culture, you also have to recognize the brand is not as owned as some other places.
Yeah.
Because anybody can chime in, I called up so-and-so and did this project. Great. That's awesome. It also offers opportunity for us again. And so my thing's always about growing the brand. If I have to grow my team to do that, great. But for like the last 10, 15 years, video was done out of house. I had to reach out to people, whether we wrote the scripts, whether we said we have an idea, we need help, or we didn't even know what we needed. You had to go through that process. And so we recognized finally, like we'd reached a point, we need to manage that. We need to build that internally, and we need to build out that diversity back to bringing in agencies to help us build that brand and surface things that they don't know. That's why it always comes back to that play. When you think about what we're talking about today with like vendors wanting to know how to deal with in-house, it always comes back to the same thing I said about hiring Joe. Are you somebody who thinks that because you're bringing a specialty to bear or experience with different brands to bear that you know more than the in-house group? You will never know more than the in-house group.
Yeah.
You may have skill sets they don't have, but when it comes to why you're working with them, you're working with them because they need you to make their brand better. When you come in and say, I know more about your brand, I'm better at your brand, turns us off immediately. I can talk to any in-house group. They always feel that way. And it's just a simple flip. Like we often talk about, we deal with relationships more than the vendors. It's when the relationship is, hey, I'm recognizing where you guys are coming from. I see why you need me in here. I see where the experience is. Have you considered this? Have we done this? And it's truly like building each other up. That's where in-house groups and out-house groups work so well together. They make great work. But that's that line where you've got to be willing to lean in on both sides with, we have to be honest and say, we don't know something, or we need this help, or whatever it may be. And groups coming in from a vendor perspective have to be open to say, I don't know anything about your brand, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but I'm sure as hell going to work like hard as I can to make it amazing.
And you're talking about people coming at you just as an outside vendor for a project or two, not even necessarily trying to be part of your team.
Yep.
Just, okay.
Oh, yeah. The vendor play is huge. I mean, we've had vendors, we've used them once, and then we're like, yep, we're done. The whole time
even your vendors are coming at you saying they know more about Kronos than you?
It's not of knowing more about Kronos than you. There's a fine line there. It's when you bring forth, hey, we have a video idea, and we understand how the process is going to work. You know, we talk to the vendors, and it's a play of, all right, we'll do scripting. We're going to go to storyboard. We're going to take storyboard to this stage. We're going to work through it at this point. We'll switch to production. We're going to be doing the editing play, obviously, everything. So you're working with the outside group. And at scripting, there's like 7 or 8 levels of pushback that are questioning content and other things. Well, why would you want to say this? Well, can you do it this way? Can you do it that way? Where it's just a switch to, if you will, overbearing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, you're not going to know our content as well. You may know how to present it better. That's why we're bringing you in. We want that insight, but not in a play of like changing the communication, changing the tone. So we've had to work through that over the years. And right now, I'd say the last 5 years, we haven't had a vendor who doesn't think that way. It's like we're trying to build a long-term play, and we're trying to expand across the Kronos brand. So we start most conversations about what our brand represents. We don't start with what project we need you to do. It's like, here's the brand you're representing. Here's why it's important to us. Now here's the project. You know, are you interested? So
that's a great point too, because coming over to Kronos too, it's a really unique position to be in because we have the in-house creative directors, associate creative directors, writers, designers, print experts, project managers, video people. And it's one of those things where we concept a lot ourselves internally. So, a project will come down from our stakeholder, our internal client, and come to us. And we'll go through all the motions of the brainstorming, the project kickoff, the brainstorming, the concepting, and then we get to a point where we need to bring in a vendor and we need to start talking to a vendor. And it's unique, and I still think we're figuring this out, but it's a unique position to be in because that vendor then looks at what we've come up with from a kind of a concept perspective, and they might have some creative input as well, like, oh, did you think about a walk and talk and shooting a continuous like X, Y, and Z? Or maybe it is to use different gear or flip the concept a little bit more on its head. But it's a challenge because what Ken just mentioned, we've already just went through all of that, essentially. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's where kind of the agency model, the ad agency model is they're concepting doing that and then going to their client, the JetBlue, and saying, pick a concept, you know what I mean? Whereas we're concepting for Kronos, going to our creative partner, our vendor, our production vendor, and just saying make this, but we also are looking for a little bit of partnership on like how that treatment, how that visual comes to life a little bit better. But there's sometimes where if we hired you on a project, you might say, did you guys think of this? And we might go, you know what, let's re-explore that a little bit. Let's tweak it a little bit. So we do have that back and forth. It's just trying to figure out how to marry that relationship a little bit.
When I talk to some in-house groups, events I've been at for in-house groups, you talk to some people, they're almost like shocked to some extent how honest you might have to be. And yet, if you want the good work, you have
honest
to
in what way?
In what stage you're at in the engagement internally.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of times what gets skipped is not telling an external vendor, we already pitched a client.
Yeah.
You're used to pitching a client. We don't need you to do that. We're done. Now we need you to come in and make the outcome the best it can be. And you're going to bring new ideas because that's why we just asked you to come and help make it the best you can be. But we've got a storyboard already.
Do you think it's good practice to come in and be like, where are you with this project? Like, is this done and you're basically just want us to make exactly what you have? Or do you want input? Do you think that's a good way to be approached by production companies?
It is a very good way to be approached. I think the one thing that has to be underscored before that, I know Joe's probably going to comment on me as soon as I say this, is you're already building a relationship before they're in the door. You either know about them through your network, You know about them for the skill set you're going to use whenever the opportunity arises, or you've been in back and forth conversations because you couldn't make a project work yet, but you both wanted to.
Yeah.
So you should already be doing that, but each project is different. So I think it is worth hitting that point at the start of each project. What do you really see our role as here? And you shouldn't have to ask if an in-house group is doing their due diligence.
Going back to how we were working, you guys were pretty clear about what you wanted from us. But if you weren't, and you were like, this is our idea, do you think it's better for a production company to just take that and then come back at you with something fleshed out, a new proposal, run you down through all the details that they think are best for the project? Or do you think it's better for them right off the bat to get into a communication with you about like, all right, what do you want to see with this project? Like, I guess, what are you looking for? Do you look for fresh ideas, or do you look for someone that can make your ideas happen? What do you think?
Yeah, so Ken definitely needs to comment on this one as well. But from a producer standpoint, and Ken just mentioned it, essentially, if we're doing our jobs the right way, if I'm doing my job the right way, when I'm bringing you in, I'm crystal clear of like what the ask is from that production company, which makes total sense.
It's where you get into the point where the ask isn't being addressed first and foremost. And then have you either made that better? Awesome. That's probably what we ask 90% of the time. Have you also considered ways to improve us in the long run? We love that.
I want to talk about the respect for budgets, because this happens a lot where from my perspective, I always want to know what do you want to do? If you already have ideas, what are they? And what do you have for a budget? That's like the most valuable thing for a production company to know, but a lot of people don't want to say it. And I think there's a little bit of that, like, well, I don't really know. Like, what can you do this for? And it goes back and forth like that. You guys didn't really work like that. You came to me with a very concrete budget, which was good. And we actually ended up going above the budget because ideas came in and things changed, whatever. But you came in with a number, a solid number. So I want to ask you, Joe, you come in, you say, this is the project, this is the number we want to be at. Do you want a company to come back to you and just tell you flat out, like, no, it can't happen? Or would you rather them come to you and say, I can make it happen, this is how, but if we had more, you know what I mean? Like, I know Ken talked about that as a great working relationship, but do you like to see that from your perspective? Because you're dealing with production.
Yeah, I do. And I think, it's funny, like a little bit of both, but at the same time, I always tell my vendors, I think I said this to you, like I work for Kronos, but I'm on team vendor. I am an editor and a shooter. That's how I came through the agency, world, and also shooting and editing myself. And then I became a producer. Like my number one goal is to protect our vendors, but also make sure they're getting everything that they need to get as far as information as well. Sometimes we have to play a little bit of a, here's what we have for a budget, can you meet us there? Or, we have to say, I'm not sure what the budget is yet, but like, here are the concepts. Like for something like the project we came to you with, we knew it was a little bit of a higher budget. It's our biggest show every year. We knew we had some money for it, but at the same time, if we started talking and an idea came up that was the idea and it was an extra X amount of thousands of dollars, to get there, we probably could have made that happen. You know what I mean? Because we are 100% dedicated to making sure that our customer show is the best customer show and experience that we're putting on this year.
And just to get people up to speed, the project we did, it was a video for your big sales conference every year called
Users Conference
called Kronos Works, and it's your largest budget project of the year. We were lucky enough to be awarded that job last year, and it was a big deal. It was a conceptual ad. We did a whole bunch of different things for it, but we had a lot of conversations back and forth about budget.
I interrupt there for 1 second on the budget play. It's also one of those things. You don't know going in, and this is not a layer to my comment about the in-house group needing to be upfront too.
Yeah.
This is when you wouldn't get the first few interactions with in-house is, how do they manage their budget? We're not talking, some people, let's take it to the baseline. Can they balance a budget? Can you take
You're saying how did the production company manage it?
No, how does the in-house?
Okay.
The in-house,
okay.
There's layers of I'm not talking about whether somebody can actually maintain their budget. I don't mean that. I mean who has ownership. So when you're in-house, you might have a centralized budget for video or production. You might have a centralized budget for certain operations things, whatever it may be. Or you may have the internal clients have the budget back to us already having pitched the client. They may, we love this idea. And we're like, they might have come to us and said, well, how much does it cost to make that? Because it's their money. So we might already have had an internal conversation around, can we get $15K out of you guys? Because what you just came to us and you said, hey, could we get the talking head view for $1,000? You're like, absolutely not. You might as well go tape it with your iPhone. Please use a good mic. But the scenario is...
Do you get crazy requests like that?
Yes,
of course you do.
All the time.
Of course you do.
God. How do people not know that? At least, you're not going to know what it's really going to cost, but you know it's not going to be $1,000.
Yeah.
You would be shocked.
It's not a known thing. We've had a request for, like, can we put forth a menu? And Joe and I have done a decent job recently of, like, beating ourselves up because we didn't want to do it. And I've even told our internal clients, like, this is not an easy thing to do. I can't say definitively I can get you a talking head video for $2,500 to $10,000.
Yeah.
How long is it? Are we using 2 cameras? Are we doing this? Like, there's so many things in play. But try to give them a ballpark so they can at least do a little planning.
Sure. The
interesting part with our project that you might not have known, and I was trying to rack my head if we ever told you during the process, I produce the show, as Joe mentioned, for Kronos Works, and it's my direct line that is the budget. So it goes next to my VP and then to our CMO. So
that's why there was wiggle room.
When we needed more money, I said, yes, I'll give you more money. Okay. It came out of my budget. So
Ken might have given me a look, you know what I mean? But that's how we would need to get there.
Yeah. And then my, of course, classic, and it's not a podcast listener, but my boss, I didn't even tell him the budget had changed. I pitched the new idea and was like, here's where we're going with this. We're really thrilled about this. Here's what we're doing. And yep, there you go. And we went into him and the CMO went, and then here's the new budget line. It wasn't a pitch about the money. It was, hey, we've recognized consistency would be good, back to the look thing. We could connect the style of the 4 videos. We want to do a talent thing that was a higher level than we were planning, so we need a little bit better talent. And put those 2 things into play, the number moved, but in the grand scheme of things, we didn't talk number until the PO had to be flipped over and be actually executed. So we took a chance on that. 19 years being here, I knew what I could get away with, but also it was from that perspective, that 2 hours, there's 2 or 3 of us in there, that's our show. So we were able to look at it from that perspective. But you don't know that going in. It might be somebody who we had to beat up internally, this has happened, to get an extra $5K. So then if you come back with well, you know how we said we could do it for 10, I'm really looking at the budget, now it's 12. We just had to fight to get the 5.
Yeah.
You know, so you're not going to get that intel. You're not until you've been in the trenches with us on a few projects. And that does happen because I think the other thing I noted, and Joe works this way, I wouldn't have hired him honestly if he didn't. Very upfront with where we want to go to relationships. He just said he's team vendor. I can't think of vendors of mine that I don't at some point have very comfortable relationship with from a sharing things. I won't share out of school, but I share to the point that you're better informed to do your job because at some point you're actively representing us. There's just no way around it. You might talk about working with Kronos. Are they a good client? We want to be a good client too. Like you get those spots sometimes like, oh wow, this happened and that happened and then this overage happened and then that edit happened and then we were frustrated with the vendor. 7 out of 10 times you're culpable for that. You might be a bad client or you didn't organize your things on your side. So we're always thinking about where's that transition happening? There are 4, 5, 6 projects where it's just like, yeah, you're part of the team. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do. You got to put in the time to do it. But that was something I talked to Joe about. I'm like, one of his requests, second interview out of like 3.
Over the 4th glass of scotch.
Yeah.
You really need to be wined and dined, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Ben, do you want a job? I need whiskey.
I'm taking notes as we go.
But it was one of those things where it's second conversation, and Joe was talking about like, well, am I going to be able to bring in some of my network? I'm like, well, who? Why? Because you're friendly with them, or because you have built that relationship in a manner that adds honesty, integrity, respect to the process, and then goes for unique work. It's always got to have that last thing, but we want to build that consistent relationship because when you're an older brand, when you're somebody who's had to work through the trenches internally, you can't have any spots where you don't feel like your ducks are in a row because that's when it comes back to, oh, we can't do what we said we could do, or, oh, we've put our vendor in a bad place. Why do they want to work with us? Don't want to be in that bucket.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
All right, I want to talk about what your expectations are in your production vendors. What should a new vendor bring to you or to really anybody at an in-house agency when they're pitching themselves?
Yeah.
Is it all about the reel? Is it about the way they are on the phone? Is it about, like what is it that you're looking for that initial spark of like, I think I could work with these people?
So Ken might have a different experience, to be completely honest, from my eyes. It is, I don't think we have worked with a vendor here at Kronos yet that I haven't been referred to. So basically someone said, I worked with Ben Consoli at BC Media Productions, you should come check out his stuff. He is, I think he'd be good for Kronos, you know what I mean? And I go, okay. Same thing goes with a lot of our other vendors, other relationships I have. Some people I've worked directly with, and then some other vendors just say, hey, I can't do that animation job, but have you talked to X person? And do you recommend them? Yeah. And then, I go for the reels. We look at the reels. We did a project with a medium-sized kind of agency that it needed kind of like some art direction, some more producers on staff. And that actually came in from a kind of like a rogue email, like just came to me like, hey, we'd love to work with you. And there was a project coming up, and I rarely do this. Usually I just delete those emails. There's a project coming up, and then, in the back of my head, I just said, I've heard of these guys. I know a couple people that have worked there before. Let me look into it. It all checked out. I talked to a couple producers that came from that production company. They said, great work, you know what I mean? I left because of X reason, but excellent work. I would highly recommend working for them. And I have the conversation. And we look at the work, but then we start talking about what the concept is, and we start tossing ideas around, and that's kind of how we move forward. So, we're definitely looking at the work, but at the same time, it's really the relationship and the one-to-one interaction that is everything to me. Everything.
I mean, that's great news for people like me and my production company, because we've been around a while, but that like sucks for people that are brand new. Yeah. And you know what I mean? So it's like, and I appreciate your honesty about how you said you sort of delete those emails that are like, hey, I want to work with you. Yeah. A small part of my soul dies when I hear that, because I just know that I send so many of those out. Not as many now, but when I first started, like that goes out so much. But like, and I'm sure the people in the audience are doing this as well, just sending out those emails. Yeah. I think you have to know that most of them are not going to be looked at, because how many of those do you get realistically?
A ton, and we get them from everyone. Like Ken's, boss will send them to him, and he'll forward them to me, and I'll just look at it and say, but it depends who it is. It depends on the production company. If it's, hi, I'm a shooter editor, I'll remember you and I might write your name down, but great, can you handle a $100,000 shoot? Yeah. I know you can't. Like immediately, kind of like in my head from what your reel is, to your point, and then move forward. But it could be another project that comes up that we might want to reach out to you on. So but it's also the experience. Like it's when, if you're just starting out, totally. Like I was that person too. I was totally that person. Yeah, like 100%.
Everybody starts there.
But it's honestly, and I speak at a lot of like university stuff too about like how to coming out of college and students like learning their way or whatnot. It takes time to develop that, but it's relationships and networking hands down. But keep sending the emails, because that's how this one vendor kind of came through the door. But it was me asking somebody, hey, have you heard of these guys? Yes, they're awesome. Go talk to them at least. And that was their foot in the door. We talked to them. We ended up doing a job together. Same exact thing went for you. I mean, it was the exact same process. You know what I mean? You didn't come searching for us for that.
Yeah. The project, the project that we met on is, you can find it on our website at bcmediaproductions.com. It's the one we did for Sokolov. Ken, same question for you. Like, how often do those cold emails come to you asking for work, and what's your response to them?
Delete. At some point I was depressed to find in the last 4 or 5 years, whereas moving up the food chain over the years, I switched from getting ones that were very inspiring to mostly being, hey, there's a war on talent and I see you're at X level. We can get you great creative people. So mine's mostly like recruiters, staffing groups, occasionally photographers or videos will come in occasionally. Most of the time when they come in where they'll get past the gatekeeper for me, not surprising, it's same thing. It's like the extended network. I don't view it as my network, which is odd enough. But if the boss gets one and chooses to pass it along, or I just recently got one passed along from the CEO. Like, all right, well, at least I have to look at it. But luckily I work at a place where if I go, thanks for sending, I'm not going to call, it's okay too. But the interesting part to me is I always think back to, I can't remember if it was How Design Conference 2 years ago or 4 years ago, I went, there was a comment that was made about, if you didn't get it through your network, then you don't have a network. And I was like, that is so true.
Yeah.
And when someone makes it that simplistic, you go, holy crap, that guy was right. Like, how many times have you brought in somebody new cold versus how many times have you done it through your network? No matter whether it's a broad network, no matter whether it's, just you have one friend who keeps feeding you, it doesn't matter. Most of your referrals come through in that manner. And I think it's scary to think about that, because I remember thinking about it that day, later in the day, and I was like, how did I get my network? You say, Joe, you go talk, it's like, how do you get these things started? It's like, yeah, you just have to do it. But it's like a whole process to some point where you go, yep, I have one. I can reach out to these 3 people and they're going to do X. Or I can reach to this person, they'll tell me something. Or someone's going to proactively send me because they know what I do. So like, I've spent enough time like, oh, Kronos brand is all about people. I got an email from what technically I guess would be one of your competitors with us. And he was like, hey, have you seen this? Like, this is a completely new way you could do quotes through doing people. You'd still be shooting the same. It might cost a little more money. Just wanted you to see it. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic.
That's cool.
You know what I did? I looked at the group that had done it, and I wrote back, I go, well, if I did it, would it kill you if I went directly to them? And it's like,
oh, so they sent you a reference that they didn't do.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, well, I didn't think you'd do that. I'm like, well, no, I'm just making the point, though. They're already doing it. Why couldn't I go to them? But it was still, again, a conversation with somebody I've known for 10 years. We went back and forth. We've had some of these chats. I knew I could ask that, frankly, to be like, what if we did that? Because the other thing you have to consider when you're working anywhere, I'm sure, but I know 100% in the Boston market, is everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
So that idea of like, I reach out to an external producer if we needed help on a full project and they're going to go to an animator. It's like, well, we know the animators. We could go right directly to that animator. When do we need the producer help versus when do we not? There is only one Joe on staff, so sometimes we need the full boat. Sometimes we don't. So now you're doing one where one of our vendors who we use all the time sees something, goes, oh, that's great work. Did you use so-and-so? Yep, we did. Oh, I would use them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys, I'm sure, fall in that all the time too on your side. And there's just no way around it. That, to me, is, again, why the network's so important, because if you're honest with your network, if you're open with your network, if you're continually pushing, like, what are we doing with our work, if you're proactively telling people what you're trying to do, you're going to get more fish when things pop up. And you don't need to take the emails where you just say, oh, that looked like a good reel. Occasionally, because I don't get as much video and photography as I used to, I will click on some just more than hit delete because I haven't got many.
Yeah.
I get a lot of newsletters and, like I said, recruiter stuff. So it's like, okay, thank you for sending me a video reel. Let me check this out. So I may be the anomaly on that one, but most of the time it's delete.
Do you get yourself off mailing lists? Like, if production companies set up mailing lists and add you to it because you've been a client of theirs, do you just like, get me off of this thing? Like, is that annoying? We'll send stuff out. They'll be like, hey, I know we haven't done anything in a while, but this is some new stuff that we did last quarter or whatever.
Yeah. So
like, is that an annoying thing to get?
It is annoying if you didn't listen to me. I count that in my upfront thing. I don't know if it was, upbringing from parents or something, but it's like, I just like people to know where I'm at. And sometimes it throws some people off. Sometimes it doesn't. Vendors, it never throws off. Vendors actually love to hear all right, I don't have a project for you. I'm glad we touched base. Thrilled that so-and-so introduced me to you. Do not send me stuff weekly. I want to see when you do an amazing project that might be related to our people brand, or I want you to touch back with me once a quarter. Let's stay in touch. And because I asked for that, I'll make sure that if you reach out, I am in touch. I don't then suddenly go into ignore mode. I just think that that's a better process than leaving you out in the wind. Like, we've connected. Why would I now put you back in cold calling? The other part is, as much as IT is amazing here and they've kept up pretty well over the last few years, there's just so much that you have to do now to clean your inbox. And then when it reaches a certain part where I walk in the morning, I got 42 emails and only 3 of them are to do something with work. Yeah, I'll take 10 and unsubscribe, and just take the first 10.
I talked to somebody about this, and something they brought up that was interesting is they were like, I don't mind it, but it makes me feel like they feel like we didn't have a relationship, even though we did. It's like, why? Like, I know you. We work together. I get it. Like, I know you're there. You didn't die. I know you're alive. So I think the constant checking in was annoying to them. From the production company standpoint, you almost feel like if you haven't heard from somebody in a while, you think like maybe they don't remember. It's a crazy thought, but I think it's the thought of a lot of people that are in this kind of a freelance world where they have to get every job that they have. Like,
Yeah.
really go out there and grab it. You know what I mean? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it's one of those things where mailing lists is one thing, checking in and saying, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Would love to connect and chat about what's coming up with Kronos and, what you guys have going on. If that is once a month, that to me is a little too...
That seems like a lot.
And it happens with some vendors, and as Ken just mentioned, if we've done a project together or where we've had a conversation, like I am as honest as can be with conversations, don't have a project right now, but love where your stuff's at. We'll think about you in the future. I promise I'm thinking about you in the future.
You are listening to the PremiumBeat.com Song of the Week. This one is called Brass Country by Origami Pigeon. Premium Beat is where to go for all of your royalty-free music and sound effects. Visit PremiumBeat.com to get access to a collection of thousands of royalty-free tracks for as low as $49 each. And it's not just the one track. You get cut downs, you get loop sets, you get stems. It's basically everything you need to customize the track to fit your project perfectly. So head over there, PremiumBeat.com, check out this song, and explore for yourself. And lastly, let's talk about Shutterstock.com. Shutterstock has recently released a new product called Elements. And this is a collection of thousands of cinema-grade video effects for filmmakers. Have you guys checked it out yet? You really should. Go to Shutterstock.com, hover over, or click on footage, and the drop down right there, it'll say Elements. You've got to check these things out. These are blockbuster quality video effects created by industry professionals, including things like 4K lens flares and transitions and video kits with smoke and fire explosions and more. You can check them all out over at Shutterstock.com. Now, if you're like me, I am certainly not a visual effects person. I don't know how to do it. If anytime I'm doing any real visual effects, I'm hiring out. But I like to dabble. I like to play a little bit. And Elements are perfect for me. You know who else they're perfect for? Professionals. Yeah, that's the thing. They're priced right for people like me. They're priced right for professionals. So anybody can go and just play with these things and see what your creativity, what comes to you when you're playing with these tools. It's just so fun to play with. And they look amazing. So they work with all the NLEs. You don't have to worry about it. But what you should be doing is going to Shutterstock.com, hovering over footage and clicking on Elements, and check these things out for yourself. It's all there at Shutterstock.com. All right, there is so much more to go with our interview with Ken Volk and Joe Serra. I hope you're learning. I hope you're taking notes. I know I am. In our last few minutes here, there's two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about, we discussed like how to approach you guys and to try to get jobs that way. Now let's assume we've done the job and now we're in post-production, because the post-production relationship it's very different than production. It's a completely different, in some ways it's a completely new relationship. Yeah. Sometimes even new people are involved because you may have a post-producer that isn't involved in production at all. So it's a very different workflow. What are you guys looking for on the post-production side when you're working with production companies? What are you looking for in that relationship?
So again, it varies per project, but if it's a heavy duty shoot that we're on set for 5 days and we're kind of in it, then I mean that really there's a level of, we try to do it all the time. There's a level of we need to let the production company step away and get their first cutout and work with their graphics people, even if it's just kind of to lightly sprinkle in some stuff, just so we can get
for timing and for things like that.
For timing and all that stuff. And that's super important. One thing, because I think, our creative team gets that, is when we get that first rough cut back, and we're saying it's not colored, it's not mixed, it's not, graphics are light for timing. Those are things that, not everyone like fully understands, especially like our stakeholder and our client. So, there's also a balance of, how much are we beating it up? I think we tend to have a lot of post-production revs on our end because as you guys, as the production company, are kind of putting together your first and second cuts or whatnot, because I assume the process is, your editors will look at a cut and then whether it's another creative person on your team go, oh, let's make this change, let's get it ready for the client. When it comes over to us, we definitely expect that rough stage, but then we're also giving a level of feedback that comes back to kind of your creative people that has to give a level of feedback, and we haven't even shown our client yet on our end.
That's a big thing. I think a lot of people don't understand. If you send out a contract and you're like, oh yeah, you get 2 rounds of revisions, that you need to outline what those rounds are, because you may have, like, just internally, you may have 2 or 3 revisions before it goes to the client, but you always have to realize that your client has a client.
Yes.
Whether you're working with an ad agency or even in-house, you guys can't show something to somebody that is partially finished if it's going to be confusing for them.
Yeah, and that's where we're figuring out that process a little bit more too, because sometimes, and that's kind of with my position being in place and how closely Ken and I and the other creative directors work on our team is, we go a handful of rounds internally back to the vendor before it goes out to our client, because our client will ask that question of, well, why is this shirt so stark? Because we're not colored yet, you know what I mean? And we're not in that phase yet. So that's one thing. We get jammed all the time with our vendors on, we're at round 6, you know what I mean? And it's like, but why did I see round 3 the way it was when it came over to us, when we thought we were going to get a little bit more finished work so we could go show our clients? So how finished would you like it to be? For a draft 1? No, draft 1. I mean, draft 1, rough as can be. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the things, like, we get that, here's the rough for timing. You guys need to time things out. But when we start getting into, now our feedback's being implemented, and, by round 2 and 3, we should be at a pretty good kind of, not finished level, but like in that fine cut kind of level, that where our next step is, let's go to color, let's go to audio mix, and let's go from there. Because hopefully, really, we want to show our client, if we can, a colored and mixed version sometimes that.
Oh, wow. So you'd show them something that's already been colored and mixed.
It depends. It depends on the client. It depends on the project.
Okay.
Because there's also that level of, as the Kronos creative team, we have the final say sometimes, or we have that level of, of course, like, our client isn't going to say, oh, how come the shirt's that color, whereas let's give them the shirt for their colors, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, let's give it color, let's give it mixed. And they're commenting on, that line didn't make sense, or, could we cut out that a little bit earlier? Sometimes we have to go back and tweak, like, those fine-tuned things. It's a crazy balance that we have to go by, but every project differs essentially.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, about the level of finish a project should be before you guys see it?
I mean, there's 2 things there. I mean, I think joke we already have with Joe is, like, sometimes I think we overthink it. You have to recognize that there's an experiential level for your client. Joe touched on it from a variable perspective. It's like every client's different. You have to recognize it's not just, are they from a relationship standpoint? Are they in position? Are they whatever the project may be? What's the level of intensity project? Those are all parameters that we have to figure out, and hopefully we somewhat either bring you in the soup if we need you, or we keep you sheltered from, to some extent. But then there's a layer there that is, do they need to be sold or not? And if we're doing our job, sometimes you have to recognize, well, geez, this is somebody who any video is going to make them happy. So do you then need to work with your vendor to say, like, all right, well, this is a new person who, like, they haven't had many videos. We need to help educate them a little bit on how video is done. We'd love to work with you guys on how we follow that process. So we're asking for a little bit of Eden guidance from you guys, because even though Joe knows most of this stuff, there's still a layer of every group does a little bit different. What are you expecting from us on this rough cut?
Yeah.
Do you want us to cut this back down and then, give you all feedback? Do you want us to just tighten it up so then we can share it with our vendors? Like, it should be that back and forth, because that's a level where we might need to be more finished because we know who we're showing or what their expectation is. And so to me, that layer of what's the experience you're trying to give the internal client is right back to that same thing of communication. And an external group coming in should be like, our expectation with post is this, this, and this. Is that how you guys want us to work? And if it's not, then it's on the internal group to go, oh, well, I'm going to need to show between rough and that next cut. I really want to show them where we're at. But rough's kind of rough for them. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't need color done, but I'm going to need to deal with the fact, like, remember when we were on shoot and you guys said you could take out that weird hum in the background? We need that out from sound, I'm sorry to say, or they're going to be like, what the hell's the hum in the background?
Yeah.
We are not going to have a level of trust with this specific client internally for them to go, oh, you mean that's going to just be taken out some magic way through software? Yeah, it is. Well, this isn't that client.
Yeah, one thing that, one just great example is we have, we have a 5 monitor trade show booth. We do some pretty heavy duty animations with that booth. Those final deliverables are shipping tomorrow, end of day for us. The client just saw the final versions, today, essentially, and all looks great. But at the same time, they've also knew what the expectation was. They knew what the creative was going to be. So it depends on which projects and like where we put that content in front of them. For some, like the project you worked on with us was we were the client on that. You know what I mean? So kind of like we could show, the people above us, which were kind of the final like approvers, but they knew exactly what was coming. Like we kind of walked them through the whole thing. I mean, the animatics and the storyboards spoke for themselves. There's nothing differentiating. The scripts were written, everything was right there. So it really varies on the project. But it's one thing I would say my biggest challenge as a in-house producer is managing both the vendor schedule and then our internal schedule. It's tough because when a V1 comes over from the vendor, great, we have to review that creatively, and then it goes back to you. And then it V2 comes back from the vendor, we review it creatively. Okay, that's in great shape. Now we schedule a meeting with our client on that and put that in front of them. And you guys might be hanging up 4 days before we get feedback from them, and then it comes back to us. We consolidate feedback, goes back to you guys. It really varies on the project. If it's something scripted and so prescriptive, that's one thing. If it's something like higher concept, then that's a completely different kind of ball game. So post really does vary when we talk about that.
I want to round out our conversation with tips for the audience, people in the audience that are trying to break into this industry, to get the attention of you guys, to people that are trying to get into this world. Something that we mentioned a little while back is that you're valuing connections that come through your network. So I'm thinking, what are some of the tips that we can give for the production companies, cinematographers, so-and-so, blah, 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 that are listening to the show now? Is it the better move to get more integrated into the local production network? Or is it better to start reaching out directly to people like you and just show their reels? Like, what do you think? What do you think is the best next step for somebody trying to work with in-house agencies?
Well, I think a lot of that before it goes to Ken will come through me, and we've already talked about that a little bit. But I think one of the biggest things is, it is that the network of people, and as Ken mentioned earlier too, it is such a small scene in Boston or in Vegas or in other kind of towns and cities, and it's often that you see X DP on one shoot and then he's on a different shoot working for a different production company, or X audio engineer, and then they're the audio engineer on our stuff that we worked on. I knew from 8 years ago working on some stuff for the stuff you did for Sokolov. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was kind of Peter, doing that stuff. So it was just kind of like seeing that all come together was like, oh, like I know these people. But it's kind of like those referrals are the biggest way of, if I contact you, hey, Ben, I need something. Hey, Joe, I'm sorry, I'm on a shoot for the next 6 weeks. I can't help you there, but talk to X company or my other, colleague over here. They can help you out. By the way, if you do something like that, refer business to another production company, that doesn't mean I'm like, that to me is, I'm totally coming back to you as a production company, because that is the fact that you can do that and shift it. That doesn't eliminate you, even if the other production company killed it. It's a huge thing. Like, to me, I will always come back to you for that relationship and that connection. And who knows, maybe you'll work with another DP from that production company and team up on a project together. It all comes around. But it's hard to say email me and cold call me, because that's not kind of gonna break through. It really, for me, just comes down to all the relationships. And then I'll walk right into Ken's office or our CMO, and Ken and I will walk in and say, something like, listen, this new product release we have coming up, check out this reel or this video from Ben, who just emailed me of what they just did for X software company.
Yeah.
We should be thinking on this level, and it might get to the level of, why don't we bring them in to chat? You know what I mean? So, it's the networking, the relationships that are super valuable to me that then walks into Ken's office, who's kind of the final decision maker on those things at the end of the day.
You have to be one of the names in the production industry that you exist in.
Yeah.
That's probably the most important. I mean, forget about reaching out to individual places. Reach out to other production companies. Get yourself on other people's sets. Be a person that other people can rely on, because your name's going to pop up when someone's not available.
That's
it's
huge.
Just going to happen.
You just said be on other people's sets. Huge. If I came off your set, and then if I had a small project that we were actually internally producing here at Kronos, which we didn't even really touch upon, we really 99% of our stuff goes out of house. But if I'm on your shoot and there's a PA and an audio designer, and then 6 months later I'm on another shoot, I'm like, oh, that PA killed it. You know what I mean? It's just a PA position, but at the same time, I want them on my shoot because I just saw that, or I want to recommend somebody or refer them out. That is huge. It's invaluable. It's totally invaluable.
And since you know the most about IHAF, right? I have.
Yeah.
First of all, tell us what that is, and is that something that people should become a member of?
Yeah. So, In-House Agency Forum. There's a couple other groups like them. I happen to think, from a networking perspective, I was with them for so many years, and have continued a relationship with them because there is a layer there of it's the network first. It's a community of like-minded groups. And so when they extend out with IHAF and you go further into the vendors, partners, and who they're working with, that level is people are dedicated to IHAF, to in-house as well. So that's, bless you, Ben. So that's the play that I think plays out in any of those is, are you actually targeting to the group? So In-House Agency Forum, they're focused on people who do like-minded things, what we're talking about at Kronos. So you can get insights. Do you get access? Do you get an engagement level that you wouldn't if you didn't go there? So is it worth it? Depends what you're after. I mean, there's any trade group, IHAF has its lines where it's like, why is the vendor in here? Is it so that they'll get business, or so they'll learn more about my business? They'll learn how to better partner with me. It always comes back to, unfortunate, relationship side of things. But I think, if you're really serious about it and you want to get more inroads into in-house groups like IHAF are spots where you do want to look at. You want to say, is this some spot where if I had X amount of money to be a member for the year, is this going to give me some inroads? I certainly think so. I think the other thing to consider is why I brought up the fact of the targeting within that of you're going to an in-house group. It's not easy to do, to market, no matter what size you are. If you're huge, if you're small, but there's a layer to what I think about what might break through to me when we talk about cold calling or emailing or whatever. I have never gotten an email from anybody that had any element that showed me they cared about my brand. And that's what an in-house group cares about, is their brand. If I ever got an email that said, in the subject line or first line in it said, check out this people first video we just made. It might be an interesting way to make your brand more unique. I might still delete it, but I'm reading it because you actually went and looked at what we do. You didn't send me, check out my sexy reel that has animals in it and an ad for something that doesn't relate to us at all, and check out the awesome, cool car ad. Yeah, you can make car ads till the cows come home, but I happen to need to be showcasing people across 32 different industries. You got a video for that? Where's that sexy reel?
Great point.
And we never get that. It's just a splash and dash. I send it out to you and I go do my own thing. If you really want my business, lean in and do it the other way. Spend time looking at what we're doing and then cater to that in the request. That doesn't happen a lot by anybody, but we're trying to do it too. That's why I said we're all marketers. We're trying to figure that out too. How do you send small to 200 instead of splash to 20,000? If you can do the 200, you always get a better outcome. And it's hard to do. You need to be on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, sending emails, going to trade shows, it's a lot. I mean, we try to do it too, and it's just not possible. So what would break through? To me, it's just a little catering to my brand. If you really want to be in-house, they want to know that you care about their brand. That's what we're starting with every day. It's the only reason I come here for 19 years.
I love that. Ken Volk and Joe Serra, thank you guys so much for being on Go Creative Show. Great discussion, and thank you for your honesty. A lot of people wouldn't do that, so we really appreciate that on this show.
Awesome. Thanks,
thank
Ben.
you. We're glad to do it.
There they go, Ken Volk and Joseph Serra from Kronos. Now that is a rare opportunity. to get these guys on the show being honest about the way that they work with production companies. I mean, when does that ever happen? And that's what we're dedicated to here at Go Creative Show. We want to educate you. We want to make this production world, this community here, stronger and better every day with each episode. And that's what we do. I also want to thank Matt Russell for mixing and mastering and making the show sound so good. You can find him over at gainstructure.com. And then also our producer, Connor Crosby from Ignition Visuals. You can see him at ignitionvisuals.com. Now, of course, I also want to encourage you guys to visit our website, gocreativeshow.com, and all of our social media, because anytime we have upcoming guests, we post about it on social media and we ask your questions on the show. And lastly, our sponsors, Hedge.video, Rule Bust and Camera, Magnanimous Rentals, Shutterstock, and Premium Beat. Support those that support us.